if I just give away 10 grand as a guy who makes like 70 grand, is that going to make a whole bunch of people literally like explode their mind? Absolutely it is. So like which thing is like just more asymmetrical? It's like extremely incremental for me to have 10,000 more dollars. It's extremely asymmetrical to be the guy who gave away $10,000 that like I probably shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I had a more like, I've just found that like indexing high on pattern interrupt, on give before get, and like being enjoyable, and it just works. So I posted a video on my Twitter and it's like explaining it. Within like 5 minutes, I'd gotten like, you know, just like a bunch of huge accounts had followed me. I was getting a bunch of these DMs. Like it was just like one of the most light switch like moments in my professional career of just being like, oh, wait, okay, just like never, don't do that again. Like always do it every single time in every single way.
Hey, Kellen.
What's up, dude?
Super excited to have you here today. I guess we've moved our meeting a couple times, but I'm glad it's happening.
Me too. This is good. This is perfect too. Like end of a Friday, like easy.
Yeah. So quick intro. Kellen is a very thoughtful guy who runs the Deal Lab and Clay Cafe, which is a great Clay community. He's been very giving to the community at large, including to me. And he has a really fascinating story that I'm excited for us to explore today. And I want more people to understand how he thinks and how he operates. And there's a lot to learn about ways that I think that he can help people see new ways of operating in the clay and GTM engineering space.
Thank you, dude. I'd like to help some.
So to jump right in, a lot of people say the best way to succeed as an agency owner or a clay agency owner is to productize your offering and get really good at doing the same thing over and over and over again. What is your thinking about that?
To me, important like definition here, right? Best and succeed.
Yeah.
You know, and I think so. To me, you know, we talked about this a little bit, but like I think most people's lens on like I'm starting a business to make money,
Mhm.
and the best and what success is sort of like the most money for like the least time potentially,
Mhm.
right? And like, and I don't want to like overly like people aren't necessarily like negatively intentioned so much as like our inclination is to not exert energy above what is like required.
Yeah.
And so there's like this kind of natural draw to like, how do I get X done with like the minimum input, right? And so what people do is they're like, they'll talk through the lens of like, what is easy to sell, what is easy to deliver, you know, what can you like really control, right? And all these things are sort of built through the lens of like, I want to be a business, I want to make money.
Mhm.
Basically, it's like, it's really, they don't want to build a business. They're like, I just want to make money. I want to make a lot of money. What can I get the market to say yes to me, right? And I think of this, you know, the analogies like Swiss cheese. Like you have this block of cheese that's like a business and the things it needs to get done.
Mhm.
And the solution providers will just poke holes in this thing and be like, I'll take a little of this, a little of this. And they leave them with like still a block of cheese. It's the same thing. And so instead of what they need to do is like, there's like a solution or a situation to be solved for. A lot of these agencies are like picking and choosing little bits of it because it
Mhm.
serves them to only do these things. It's like, oh, this is like very repeatable. It's really easy. And so I think that's good if you want like, you know, if you're chasing like hyper repeatability and like ease. You know, there's businesses that like their kind of strategies like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get 10 customers, I'm going to hire like 4 people from the Philippines, and like they're going to start doing 3 customers each. So then I, you know, and like there's this growth curve that they'll go through where like we're going to do this. My belief in this marketplace is like the best outcomes do not come from some sort of like hyper repeated, you know, sort of like standardized way of doing things.
Are you saying best in terms of hourly rate, or are you optimizing for something else?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say best. There's a couple of lenses to that. Like 100%, the way I talk about this, I will own that there's some
Mhm.
like artistic expression in this, right? There's like Kellen preference in this too, just like I'm blaming everyone else for having their preference, right? But I think it's extremely fair to say like there should be a strong tie to like what is the best for this company,
Mhm.
right? And I think usually as a solution provider into a company, it's sort of like I didn't set their mission, I didn't set their annualized targets, right? I'm being hired by someone who literally like makes money or gets fired by their ability to hit certain like, you know, numerical attributes probably basically.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think like, and looking at not only the immediate attribute, like let's say meeting set, just to make this easy, right? Someone might be like, I'm going to go against meeting set because I know I can send 1,000 emails, per 1,000 emails I send, I'll get like about a meeting. And so we're going to like make that this controllable metric, and they
Mhm.
focus on like sends meeting set control. It's like hypnotizing people, right? But a business that's trying to set meetings to sell new deals is actually on like a more zoomed out level, trying to do a whole lot of who knows what, like different things. It might be,
Mhm.
I need 10 customers that are extremely similar to each other so I can go raise a seed round or like a series A. I might need 25 customers that are similar. I might need to raise the average value of my deal to X in order to go hire a team against this number.
Mhm.
It be that I have a bloated, sales development motion and I need to get like customer acquisition costs into like some sort of feasible range, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it is just growth at all costs, but like that, like the presumption has been like growth at all costs and then like attached to some sort of micro metric associated with growth. Ultimately, someone owns the fact that there's all these people thinking about themselves and someone's like stringing that together, trying to drive like a bigger picture thing,
Mhm.
right? And those people are like lonely, unequipped, oftentimes, kind of being asked to do things that are probably a little bit outside of their expertise, pretending to be this person. It might be like, I'm a great leader. I've been a great like enterprise seller and I've led AEs, but I have no idea about RevOps and deliverability and data and automation, all of these types of things. And again, in like the Swiss cheese analogy, like providers are going to that person and they're kind of trying to like pick and choose some little stuff that's like, what is this person so desperate to get rid of that they'll just say yes
Mhm.
to and all like great. But if ultimately that person looks at their task list and it's like the same amount of like, I can't do this on my own, and they just happen to be paying you to do some subset of that, but like the big picture thing isn't solved for, like I would make the argument that that's like not the nicest thing to do to people.
Mhm.
Because they need more. And if they think, and if you're like duping them basically into thinking they're solving something broader than what you're actually participating in, you're not only like have this like messed up ROI on the deal itself, but like there is a opportunity cost to their focus if they think they're on a path towards something that is a little bit different than what they're actually getting. And that happens literally all the time.
Yeah. They may not have even the perspective to know that how to solve the problem that they're trying to solve. And if they have to manage all these people taking bites of the Swiss cheese, there's so much cognitive power going into that and making choices around it. And what they really may want is someone who's almost more senior than them in a certain aspect, and you can come in and like help them solve the whole problem.
I have this hierarchy of how people make decisions in a business. And it's like they have a target, and then you have like a strategy to hit a target, right? Which is
Mhm.
like an idea. And then you basically have like tactics to carry out a strategy, which is like actions to, taking an idea and turning it into actions. Like that's like tactical layer. And then from that, you kind of have like, tool set like operational layer, which is like how you're going to fulfill these actions, right? And it's like the higher up you can influence on this, like it changes everything downstream of it, right? And so the problem with a lot of like vendor relationships is basically the buyer might come in being like, I want X,
Mhm.
and you might do X at a price point that is agreeable. And what no one might either realize or someone might not be saying is like doing X isn't going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest threat to people that I think is sort of like just all over. It's rampant because someone might think like, as an example, like your GTM motion isn't agreeable enough that you have like a throughput issue and you're not booking enough meetings. So then you like 10x the amount of sends you do, right? And
Mhm.
if that helps you hit like this month's net number or this like, period's net number of like new meetings and new business, but you're not going to be able to keep scaling that because you're kind of like tapping the maximum of what you can do to yield that.
Right.
And if you then take that and you're like, we got more customers, and you go raise some money, and now it's like, go hire 5 times as many people
Mhm.
to go do 5 times as much of that, you're not even going to do 2 times as much of that because you're literally squeezing as much out of that strategy as you can. You're brute forcing, you're like adapting to a bad strategy to solve for more net meetings, not realizing that you're going to have this like much bigger problem into the future because no one's being like the adult in the room going like, hey guys, like, what are we actually like literally what are we aiming ourselves at? Like lots of very talented people, but what is the thing that we're actually trying to do?
Yeah.
Because usually it's not just send a million emails to set as many positive replies or meetings
Hmm.
or whatever.
Hmm.
That gets you so far, and that's a great thing to do. Like I'm not against that at all. It's just
Yeah.
it's a little chess and checkers at times.
How is your approach different?
I can't even say it's like my approach per se, but like the thing that I think we do is one is like we're really not committed to like some sort of like I'm very inspired by a lot of these people, but there's people who are like advertise how they like automate lots of bits of things they do, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And like I just can't help but imagine some people in the marketplace literally just don't want to like put a quarter into a slot machine and have something spit out. You know what I mean? And so like my lens is like, yeah, we have like these chunks of things that we've done a million times that are like good ways of like addressing different problems, and sort of like pulling on threads.
Hmm.
But we just start from like kind of like first principles of like, where are you? Where do you want to be going? Assume that works. What next? Like assume it doesn't work. What next? And I think just helping people slow down a little bit in some of their own thinking,
Hmm.
not being so transactionally inclined just in general, right? And so for me it's like that is what's interesting to me, and so I'm like very like personally sincere about like
Right.
pushing those deals away that are too much like that. But it in turn, by having like my own brand, my own flavor, and being and doing things differently, there is like this subset of like hyper desirability as well, and then there's also like some objective like, hey, there's some proof points like like this stuff really works well,
Right.
regardless if you want to be like that or not. Like so that's how we do it.
Makes sense. When you're doing these very, I don't know how to articulate it, but these very custom deals where you're looking for the actual strategy, trying to be the adult in the room and be a partner, are you selling it like that in the beginning, or like how do you approach these?
Yeah. The last time I was in like a salesperson job, right? Like when I left that, I started my own business. I did like sales consulting, right? It wasn't outbound. It was like nothing. It was just kind of like, I don't know, I know sales stuff. Like who wants to give me some money and do, it's the first thing. It's like, I don't know, do whatever, right? Because my lens was sort of like, I don't have an opinion. I'll just take whatever scraps, right? And that didn't really work. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of having an uphill time with this. I'm gonna go work for someone else, right? And so I went and I got a job doing like fractional VP of sales for this guy, Joey Gilkey. And while doing that, we were basically doing like custom sales consulting. It was like $120,000 offer. Like, it was like a high ticket, cool, really leaned in thing we were doing. And the scrutiny that you would experience against that was like really high, relatively understandably so, right? People are kind of like, I'm paying a bunch of money, like I've committed to this thing, they're in a rush, they're excited, right? And we were like doing this like via coaching through like relatively junior salespeople. And so the situation was sort of like set up in a way that like it was like operating within this model. In the way it worked, it had some friction points, right, on the delivery side because of like the pacing basically. And the reason I couldn't expedite pacing necessarily as much as I would have wanted to was because I wasn't doing the work. I was coaching someone and we were constrained by
Hmm.
how many hours we could spend with this person. So the output was just like an equation of like ideas times their ability to execute.
Hmm.
It just made no sense because if you're like
Couldn't control.
coming up with new ideas and then having like a junior person execute them, it was terrible.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, a lot of these same people were paying like cold email businesses like 3,500, 4,500 bucks a month to send emails, and I would be on these calls with these people twice a week, and they'd be like, yeah, we're not really getting anything, but I just couldn't help but notice that they wouldn't get rid of them, like a lot of. And so what I saw was like the way I put it is people love to spend that money. They love to spend the slot machine basically of like done for you anything. Like I'll just do the thing for you is super agreeable. The idea of I'm going to talk to you about ideas is not very agreeable, right? But in order to do something for someone, there has to be a good scope, right? Like there has to be a scope. Like what am I going to do for you? What are you going to say yes to me for? Something that you think I should do.
Hmm.
Well, I literally experienced this problem of what people need and what they associate with needing are like not the same thing. It's just like not, which is like obvious if you kind of just think about life, right? Like people, unhealthy people, the people that need the most like health coaching are the people who are the unhealthiest. And they're also, and the
Hmm.
people who are unhealthiest are the furthest away from having like depth of knowledge and familiarity with like how to like take control of their health. Right. And so basically when I left the consulting business and I'm like, I'm going to start my own thing. And like the lens I applied was I'm going to make a sort of transactional cold email business, something that can present as this like hyper palatable, huge demand. It has a lot of negative baggage as well, right? Cold email. But like I knew that it was sort of like you can peg to this idea that is like a lot of money flows through. On the flip side, I'm like, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to quote unquote backdoor sales consulting. And my lens was sort of like do something where like the carrot that I give people is like, hey, you want to see me like sprinting, like I'll sprint with you. Like let's sprint together. We're sprinting. Right. And then by sprinting, like if you make me the guy sprinting for you, then if I go like, hey, by the way, as we're running, I think we should kind of adjust our strides this way. You actually have like the credibility to do it. And then if you prove to them that like, hey, listening to me make some suggestions actually starts to make stuff go well, it just opens the world up because then you have trust, you have buy-in, and you have familiarity, right? Because if you're like working with someone and you start to know their business, your ability to be like, yo, dude, you should try this. It just becomes, a lot more. And so we have, our sort of main offer generally is like doing cold email stuff or doing like clay data set stuff. But I just think that like people mostly are retaining us because they're like, okay, this literally changes the way we think about things. This changes the goals that we aim at. Like that type of sort of like less tangible benefit that would be sort of miserable to sell upfront unless you have like, I didn't have the brand I did now when I started. You know what I mean? Like I got ghosted for an SDR manager job before I started my agency. You know what I mean? And so it's like I was not like, I was good and like Joey Gilkey gave me a shot. But so anyways, it was just like when I started the business, like it was not lost on me. Like I have to go knife fight to get some business in the door. Like it's not just going to flow to me. And so I was being extremely strategic around like, where's the interest going to come from? Why are people not going to turn from it? And sort of like, what is a congruent story across this whole thing that I can like really cement is like, and I wanted it to be a pattern interrupt. You know what I mean? Like Eric Nozoslawski was already doing his stuff. Jordan Crawford was doing his stuff. Nick Abraham, so it's like, there's sort of like these totems that exist of like the best, no one is going to be a better Eric than Eric literally ever. Right. But there's a million clay cold email businesses that will exist and that will do amazing stuff. And so it's like the lesson about Eric isn't like try to become him. It's like, what is like his attribute he's winning on? Like, what is the thing he goes for? What does cold IQ go for? Right. And I just knew like, okay, well, for me, it was like people don't really like cold email and like don't like scale. So how can I kind of be like, I do the transactional thing people want, but in this like more reserved, relatable, quote unquote professional way that people will be excited to invest in. So that when I go like, hey, you know how you guys hate that stuff? We do this. Like, oh my God, great.
How do you position that on the front end with the email side of things differently?
I don't think I created this word. I do genuinely think I like brought this to like go to market in our tech spaces, but like I don't care to like really get into that. Someone may have like an alternative claim. It's like message market fit. I believe that's like my word in our space. And it came from working in the fractional VP of sales thing. And what was happening was we had these founders who'd like paid 120 grand for our services, but pretty much didn't know what they said yes to. And I would be like having to articulate to them like what I was doing with the reps to be like iterating, right? Because it was basically like, why isn't this working? And be like, okay, well, what a rep's doing is we're building a list this way, and this is the message. I would be like, we need to like segment this differently. And they'd be like, we already tried segmenting. Like, why are we going to do that again? It was this huge like fireworks moment for me because I was like, oh my gosh, like they think segment and like personalize is like a checkbox, not like a process or like a feedback loop. And so I was like, okay, hold on, like how can I? And so I started like breaking down like a way to articulate the idea of like why you can basically sort of like subjectively segment a market, test ideas. Whatever happens, you like loop that back into like your presumptions on the front end, rerun the calculus, and it's just like a perennial. And you're either like validating things that are working, disqualifying things that aren't, like there's attrition, like all the normal stuff. And as soon as I realized, like, wait a minute, they literally don't understand this exists, that was the first unlock. The second one was then them going like, we have all these customers. And I had to be like, yes, the idea that like, you sell, some of these people like $100,000 websites, right? It's like someone will say yes to a $100,000 website when they know what you do, when they know they have a problem, when like all this stuff that has nothing to do with a cold outreach. You know what I mean? Like you can't rest on like, oh, we sell $100,000 websites. So like people, it's like, no, like that doesn't work. And in fact, oftentimes people who are, those types of people are just the worst at cold outreach because they don't understand them. And I had to articulate, it's not product market fit, like agreeability to solve something. Message market fit is like, how do we talk to this audience who literally doesn't know who you are that makes them be like, huh, that's and come talk to you. And that is not predicated on like what you do and what their problem is, but it's more about like showing nuance understanding of people in a way that kind of buys credibility. Like, oh, I appreciate that you know that I'm a clay agency that doesn't ever call myself
Mhm.
a clay agency, right? Like if someone put that on a cold email, you know, which you could build by basically pulling all the marketing agencies, are they a clay agency? And then, you know, yes, no, and then does it say clay agency anywhere? You know, and I'd be one of the half that are like no versus yes, stuff like that.
I love that. Nice. If you are kind of coming in on a positioning that is more chill or more professional, like you said, but the value that you are creating or on the back end, once you get integrated with their team and start running with them, that's much higher. That takes a lot more brain power, I'd imagine, to do well. And are you undercharging for what you do, or are you able to charge?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, probably. Yeah, I mean, you know, okay, so there's like so much. My knee-jerk reaction is this. I'm not undercharging because like the every deal I have is like a number that I said and they said yes to. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And I'm like very grateful for what that's like done for me. Just even meaning like there because there's lots of deals I'll do where I'm like, yo, dude, like I want, you know, I one time like made a post. This is, you know, your people actually might benefit from stuff like this. I made a post and I was like, these are 3 exact projects I want to do for companies. I will do it. Yeah, I'll do it for free. All I want is you have to say yes to like this general scope idea, like you know, a TAM build out, a CRM enrichment, and then like a signal ingestion automation thing, right? And I was basically like, I want to do these projects to get case studies, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, I want one for each. I did 3 free projects, 2 of them closed, right? Both of them I closed at amount, you know, like they close into future things because of the same thing I said about the cold email thing,
Right.
where if you're just actually good, people don't want to get rid of you. And in both of them I closed at like amounts where again, so just like the first time was like, I have no customers paying me for this, so I want a free one so I can have a case study. Then when I close them, it's like, great, I'll do it, you know, just give me this and we can like keep on kind of pulling on the thread. And so what happens is you get into like month 4 and you're like, all right, this is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Because you're like, you know, we've been meeting 3 times as much for twice as long and I do all this extra stuff. But I don't know, it's like here we are talking, you know, we weren't talking 2 years ago before I got to do that stuff. So like I think, you know, again, people are real quick as agencies to be like, how do I extract my value? You know, to me, it's like we're playing a game on a timeline, you know, and I think like opportunity to put value into the world, like, I don't resent that. You know, that is how
Mhm.
I've done what I have. And I think a lot of people look at it like, you know, if the calculus isn't in my favor, like I'm not interested, you know, and I think that's a huge miss.
Yeah, makes sense. And I want to talk about that more a little bit later. So, as far as doing the strategy side of things, is that mainly you, or do you have any other people involved?
We're a team of 7 today. Our team, like our team is like assembled pretty different, I think, too, versus like a lot of these clay agencies. Like I mean, so you know, so I have 2 people in the Philippines who have been with us like the longest, or like one of them was actually with me when I did fractional VP of sales. He's been with me
Oh,
longer
wow.
than the business has existed. Jed, I love Jed. Jed, he's like a brother to me. We became parents at very similar times while we're, you
Mhm.
know. So. Anyways, so we have them. We have a girl in Mexico who's like a GTM engineer. She used to work for the company Science, right? And then like we trained her on
Okay,
clay,
yeah.
so she's just doing her thing. We have another GTM engineer in the States, Grant, and then I have a project manager like Newt, who also worked with me at the old thing, and then Sue, who joined our team recently, who's like chief of staff, and she has like a basically like an executive coaching background.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so it's sort of like we, you know, for the first year of the business, we're basically everything I said, but 95% of revenue was like we're doing cold email campaigns to zero in on message market fit,
Mhm.
which is in of itself like a strategic initiative. The problem with that was like we would run our course because we'd be like, all right, this is working. And they'd be like, great, we're going to go hire someone who's willing to send 100,000 emails.
Yeah.
They'd be like, no, we're not going to do that. And dumb. And so, what happened? So basically, it's like the way that I would look at it is sort of like I'm definitely like the lead consultant in terms of like kind of running like fractionals, you know, whatever you call it, but like sort of strategists, right?
Mhm.
We have people on the team who are GTM engineers that can do like, you know, who basically can do the work I'm talking about those other agencies are doing. Like we can do that, right? We'll do those types of things and I help with that. And then between Nooch, Sue, and I, we generally are kind of like the people meeting with clients, you know?
Mhm.
We will continue to index extremely high on like the net, you know, future hires will be like Kellen's, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
there's a podcast by a guy, Greg Alexander, who on Built to Sell, He ran a sales consulting business. They did like, he calls them productized services in the podcast, but they did like a million different things. And his whole point was like, I'll sell you this. And then when you're done with that, we can do this. And so it's like, and they hired consultants, 30 employees total, 30 million revenue, sold for 168 million revenue or dollars sold. So point being, there's like a form. So I see my business more of like that type of business in the Clay cold email ecosystem than like a cold email Clay agency. You know what I mean? Because to me, like it's a checkbox to do some of the other, like the tactical things.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the people, that we generally are hiring us are like, I think this, the brains behind what's about to happen are like particularly interesting.
How are you managing to hire and hold on to the brains or people who are just really strategic as well?
Yeah, we're like not cheap asses. Like, I mean, so it's like if you think of like the idea of hiring in a business, right? So okay, so when someone comes in, one of the reasons it's really good to have a brand is like there is a lot of, Kellen K-Spear will retain people in the ecosystem at the same rate of work, at the same pay rate that someone else wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like there's discretionary benefits like working in this ecosystem. And so again, just like people are, agency people can be with clients where it's super transactional, people like that with talent, where it's like, oh, there's this person, I'm just going to jam this stuff on them. I'm going to pay them this rate that's like me just arbitraging like a region, and I'm going to give them no growth potential. They're just going to do this for me forever, and I squeeze, on the back end. You know what I mean? And so I think like probably in that, it probably is like really hard to retain people, and there's probably issues. Just like I'm very mission oriented with like customer acquisition, we are with team stuff. So I think most people are kind of like partially want to be along for, the revolution, so to speak, and partially want to like forge themselves in that with the idea being like, hey, over the next 10 years, what does this look like for, us together or whatever, people end up doing. So I think some of that
makes a lot of sense. When you were starting and you didn't, like you said, you didn't have that much of a brand, are there things you did was it just like, I'm going to be Kellen and like, that's going to bring people to me, or is there something else you did?
I had some brand when I started my business. On LinkedIn especially. So before the fractional VP of sales job, I did chief of staff, head of go-to-market for like an early stage company. And that was like during the COVID era that was like working on burnout mitigation stuff basically, and like team performance stuff. And we basically like our brand was like dunking on HR. And so we were like pro performance, pro sales, dunking on HR and kind of like making fun of stuff. And so like I got to build like a brand that was like familiarity, likability, but kind of like lacking like punch. It was kind of like people like, I think like I don't know, I probably had like 8,000 followers or something, right? Which is like, compared to someone starting with nothing, it's like I had like some audience and there was some like surface area of like, there's this Kellen guy, he's been in like sales and stuff, I guess. When I started the agency, honestly, I just did kind of like Eric's style, like not so okay. So my lens is like Eric shows like how to use tools to do things. So what I started doing was taking Miro boards and doing like unstructured, like chaotic, strategic type thinking that was like not data fields, wasn't technology, wasn't RevOps, but was like concepts. And I started basically just giving, just same stuff he does, which is like, here's something I'm working on. Let me like spin it. And to this day, that's just what I do. It's like,
nice.
Like whimsically like doing stuff. I'm like, oh, here, let's do this or whatever. And I think that's, to me, like part of the whole brand is like super transparent, really direct, very like give centric. So sort of like, I'm going to show off exactly how something could work. And to me, like, the kind of business strategy behind that is like, show off work that demonstrates I'm upper echelon, teach them the nuance, which is complex and difficult, but is real. Don't be dishonest. And there is an obvious inclination then from a smart person who's like, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to do that. And this is the guy who's capable of articulating this in a way that I'm interested in continuing to talk to them.
Right.
And I had like a freaking $18 billion company come inbound one time, and the guy literally gets on this call. Yeah, like basically one of the biggest fintech companies. And he's like, he literally opens, he goes, just to be clear, I think it's extremely unlikely. And this was really nice. He, and so it's like, I don't know, someone's like, oh, this isn't that good of an op. But like, he's like, I think it's extremely unlikely we're going to be able to work together because I think there's limitations to like Clay and some of these types of tools for our ecosystem. But I've been paying attention to your LinkedIn posts, and I'm really interested in having this conversation with you. And to me, that was like, this dude has like a 90-person BDR team among other departments and stuff, so to me, I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And my, from the get-go, I had this lens that's like the cheesy transactional lens on everything that is like that is available to chase, and you can build. There's like super way more successful than me monetarily businesses doing this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And impactful businesses too. Like I don't even think this is just like sucks. It's just like a different flavor and
Yeah.
different tools for different jobs and stuff. Because again, a lot of the agency people get so like like no, 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 like this sucks, this is good. And to me, it's like it can all be fine. Like, great, go do your thing. Like
Yeah.
again, like demonstrate what you actually do, talk about your actual ideas, focus on like solving things and outcomes, not complaining about the other things. And
Mhm.
like my experience has been that works pretty well. And when I look at people who aren't doing that and who are chirping at each other, I'm like, I bet that that's because you're having a tough time and you think you're failing because this other person like is doing okay or something, which is very misguided.
So, did you just sip from a clay mug made
Yeah.
out of ceramic as well?
Yeah. Clay in the Bay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Really cool. I talked with someone, I don't know, Jorge Macias.
Yep.
He Clay had sent him a little onesie for his baby that's about to come, and
No, they're great, dude. They're so cool. My like I have like a 2-year-old, and one time he just comes in, he's like, Daddy's doing data sets, Daddy's doing clay. And so like I got a video of him doing that and I like sent it to their team and that made its rounds. They're super cool. To me, they're yeah, such good vibes.
awesome. Yeah. One thing I really like about kind of an interesting segue, one thing that I really like about the clay community, and I think a lot of people sense, in contrast, I think in strong contrast to products, for example, like Go High Level, is that clay is like very giving, pretty non-spammy in general, great vibes. And I think you're one of the people in the community that's very much driven by giving. And I'd be curious if you would talk about your story that kind of led up to those beliefs around giving, or maybe just like a summary of your life story.
Yeah, I'll hit like I'll try to hit like life story, right? So basically, I knew I wanted to be in sales since I was 5 years old. I asked my dad, just like everyone else, I go, what job makes the most money, right? Like I literally like, so to go, again, I'm not hating on these people because I started here too. I'm like, but I was 5. So I'm like, Dad, what job pays the most? And he goes, there's one job in the world where you choose how much money you make. He was a small business owner and he's like,
Mhm.
sales, don't own a business, go do sales. And I'm like, okay, well, and he's like, because depending on how hard you work, you control it. Like there's all these other, great. So I always want to be in sales. I tested out of high school as a 15-year-old, freshman year. I started doing community college the next year and working full time. I came up through the trades. And so I was like commuting out to the city, I was doing like an hour commute and I was like crawling under houses and like hauling tools around and stuff. I did that while going through school, as I basically transferred to like San Francisco State at like the same time as my high school class with all this like trade work experience.
Mm,
By then I started my own business doing the trade stuff. Plus I was
mhm.
selling gym memberships and office furniture rentals because I was worried that like doing my own business would not be good enough for my resume.
I see.
And so I wanted like other sales jobs, like hawking gym
I
memberships.
see.
Yeah, it was just hilarious. Mind you, literally. So like, I come from like the suburbs. My dad was like a small business guy, right? And so like, I'm not kidding you. My dream was to get into tech sales. Like that was legitimately. So I was like, I one time went like 70 something days without a day off because I had like 3 jobs and I was going to school. And my wife, she's my girlfriend at the time. She's basically like, dude, if you don't stop this, we're through. Like you cannot keep doing this. I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to quit the gym and I'm going to quit the office furniture. I'm going to keep doing the trade job. And, I got 8 months of school left or whatever.
Mm.
And so finish school, I get, my first SDR job. I'm like so excited. I walk in, wearing a suit. I'm like, I'm on Sarah's team. And they're like, she quit last week. It's like, all right. And they're like, sit down, copy paste this email. Here's the phone script. Here's the LinkedIn script. Just do this forever.
Mhm.
Right. And so for me, I'm like in my dream, finding out is just like copy pasting things. Right.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
had more sales experience than anyone else, like on my floor, basically. So kind of like the team leads are like, dang, this guy seems like he knows some stuff, which I didn't, but like I knew, I had intention or whatever. And so that job was like boring, like it was like a bummer. And I kind of learned like, okay, it's not like you want I just learned what a lot of people do where you kind of take for granted, like, hey, it's not going to be made easy for you. Like, it's not show up
Mhm.
and just do stuff. It's like, you got to make it work.
Mhm.
So I sold myself into a full cycle AE job, right? That one, I'm like, I'm going to work so hard.
In that same company, you're
No,
saying?
different company. Yeah. Left there, full cycle AE. I was like 20 years younger than like anyone else they normally hire in sales because they hire people with like networks. And I'm like, I'm going to do outbound really hard because I'm just like, I want it so bad. And so they hired me. It went okay. Like I was like kind of like top third of the team, but like bottom of the top third. And sort of COVID happened. They removed quotas. They're like, I don't know that we really want you guys doing outbound. Like they kind of want to sit around. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I went to an early stage company, right? Chief of staff, head of go to market, like halved my pay to do this. But I got to go build my brand, right? Like I was talking about earlier, I got to start being like a reverend. I got to start being me, right? Like this founder and I connected over Taleb. That's why he hired me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It was because
Nassim Taleb, the anti-fragile author.
yeah. He literally and the whole thing was like the reason I said yes to him is I was like, hey, I don't know, I don't really just want to be like a sales guy in this early stage thing. And he's like, I hire you because you do sales. I want to hire you because you think like me. And that's, that's like for a guy like me, that's like the nicest thing you can say. So joined the business, chipping away at that. I had a new mortgage. COVID was happening, right? So I had a bunch of friends who like lost their jobs, and I knew of a bunch of people who were like non-compliant losing their jobs and stuff. And so I basically was like, I'm going to create a guide on how to become a remote salesperson because I can help people get remote sales jobs who like have lost their jobs and who are remote. And I had a bunch of friends in like West Virginia and places where like them like arbitraging to like Bay Area SDR rates would be
All right.
usurping their parents as like 24-year-olds and stuff. So I basically like had this idea, right? And so you'd asked earlier, like where does the giving thing come from, right?
Mhm.
Conceptually, I think it literally just comes from Josh Braun. Like he's just a deposit before withdrawal, before withdrawal. Right? Josh Braun first, Miles Veth, who's another cold email agency guy that's like an OG.
I knew him back when I was at Letterfriend, like it was like 8 years ago or something.
Yeah,
Like when he
amazing.
was, so yeah,
Yeah.
he's been around a while. Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah, I was a customer of his as an AE rep. He let me buy his services for like $500 a month back when you could send like one domain 500 emails. Miles was someone who like is very pro Josh Braun, and he would like post and talk about a lot of this stuff. And so basically,
Winslow Groban is an American singer.
we unlocked the Apple overlords. And so basically, I knew that there were these people who like really benefit from getting these jobs. And I just basically had the idea of like, I should create a guide on how to do this. And I was going to do it as a business. I did it as a business. And so so then I'm like, okay, I'm going to create this guide. And then like, there's this online wisdom that exists that's like pre-release it before you do things so that you're like motivated and on the hook to actually do it. Right.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like $200, how to become an SDR.
Oh, you pre-sold it.
Yeah.
Not
I hadn't
just
made
okay,
anything.
okay.
I did nothing. And so this was like December 21st, of like 2021, I think, or 17th or something. Yeah, 17th actually is what it was because I was gonna do this for 2 weeks. And so on the 17th, I'm like pre-sale 2 weeks, Jan 1, pay attention. And I sell it for $200 in the first like few days. I made like $8,000. Like a bunch of these things sold, right? Which was more than I was making in my day job on like a monthly basis, And this is like, and so I was just like, I'm like, whoa, like I'm rich, like we're killing it. So basically, like I make this money and I just kind of had this like hint of this, I don't know. I have this like weird chip on my shoulder where like non-self-serving things are really exciting to me, kind of. You know what I mean? So it's like if someone like hits me, I have this like reaction to kind of be like stoked to like get after it. And I think I have the same if I do like self-loss, It's kind of like giving gives me like a similar sort of excitement. So basically, I had this idea that I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is, and we'll get to the punchline of it, but I'm like, I'm going to like completely go off my normal brand, which is like not pushy and like consultative. I'm going to like shill the hell out of this thing. Like I'm going to push super hard. And I'm like, and so I started posting online. I'm like, everyone should buy my guide. I was literally saying things like, I don't care if you're the president of the United States, you should be buying this. Like you could be a lawyer and have 10 houses, you should be buying this. And so it's just being like really goofy about it.
I
Because
see.
people are like, what the hell is this guy doing? But I was being also like, because I'm like the kind of person that I won't be completely like, there will be some truth, like any good joke. There's some truth in it. And I was sincere that I'm like, you should do this because I knew what I was going to do. So I drove the sales up to like 10 grand or whatever it was in this first 2 weeks off $200 sales. So then on like January 1, I posted a video and I was like, hey, anyone who pre-sold this, I've already refunded you all of your money. You can just have the guide for free. You get the money back. Like, thank you so, basically like, thank you for like showing me what's possible because I definitely didn't expect this was what's going to happen. And I'm like thinking different, which is super cool. Then I'm like, everyone else, like I told you guys, you should have bought it. You should have believed me. You shouldn't have thought that I was going to like show things like that. Like, of course there was some sort of punchline. And so from now until, you know, like for the next month or whatever, I'm going to make the guide like $100 instead of 200, because even at the pre-sale price, some people that I like personally knew had been like, I'd buy it, but only at $100. So it's like, okay, cool, make a discount.
Right, because they didn't have jobs probably.
Yeah, just like whatever. Yeah, even like I like sincerely hadn't even thought about it too much. You know what I mean? It was just like an
Right,
idea.
right,
I don't know. It's like
right.
people buy courses like $200. So then I'm like, okay, it's gonna be $100, and then I'm gonna make it $300. The first month, I made back everything. The first like 3 months, I made like 40 grand, which was just like stupid compared to like, you know, my job. I was on like pre-seed funded company wages. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
So it was like this huge deal. In the first year, it made over 100 grand like total. You know what I mean? And so I, you know, surpassed my day job with this stupid guide. And but importantly, like, so giving it away first, like, was the first marketing promo for it, via the goodwill off of that, for like just literally still to this, like the other day I got a message from someone that was like, hey Kellen, I use your guide in 20, they're like a sales VP now. And they're like, I use your, you know, we've never talked before. I use your guide back then. This is what's happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. I just want to say thank you so much.
Wow.
It's like,
Wow.
so, and I get things like that every once in a while. It's super cool. So a bunch of people use, you know, and it like literally help. Like, actually, do you know, this is funny lore. Are you familiar with the story of that guy Bodega Bro?
Mm-mm.
He made fun of like New York bodegas during COVID, and he got fired from his job.
I've heard of him.
So like it was like this random like social thing where, you know, it's like people are just familiar because this guy who's like, he's like, he moved to New York and he's like, I went to a bodega and I went in, and he's like, he's not like being terrible. He's like saying some like mean, kind of like, it's like bummy basically.
Mm. Mm.
And so people got like mad on social media. He ended up getting fired from his job. Like, I got him the guide. He used the guide to get a sales job. So it's just like there's some really funny like random little nodes of like super serendipitous. Like, you know, I had people that are like, I have a company with 100 employees. I just bought 20 of the guides, and I'm just gonna like give them to anyone I know
Oh
because
wow.
like I saw what you did and I thought that was really cool. I get people that are like, you know, I'd have SDRs get hired at companies who would then like fire the sales manager, and they'd be this SDR, and then they'd like intro me into the founders to come in and talk to them, you know. So it's like it became so clear. So what happened is it was like, oh, wait a minute, the dollars and cents of the guide
Mm.
aren't actually the value. So then I just made the guy free, because I'm like, actually the value is like, one, people being like, this Kellen guy's awesome. Two is like having like my people implanted in all of these companies. And so it gets multiple downloads every single day, still, just every single day. Just have a little Slack channel. It's just the guides. And it's just like this person. And you know what's funny is people tip me sometimes for it. So every once in a while,
I
someone's
see.
like
It's your on
30.
Gumroad or something.
Well, it's yeah, exactly. And so it's a cheat code, because when someone like I'll have someone send me like $2, and I'll like figure out their email address. I'll email them and I'll be like, hey, you just gave me these $2. I'm like, you have no idea what you just unlocked. Like, I'm like, you want to, here's my cell phone number, you know, and then, you know, literally no one's going to do it. So I'm not even worried about it. But it's because it's the kind of thing that I'm just really clear. It's like, so to me, it's like the win that I want is really big. And so it's kind of like in every little situation, it's like, is this the big win? If not, let it ride. Like, serve others to get yourself to the next thing. And it's like the thing most people won't do. And then you do it like over a really long period of time with like a super demonstrable track record.
Hmm.
And you know, this momentum can exist. It's like crazy, you know, just absolutely life changing. And 100%, it's like on doing things for other people, like literally. And it's not, you know, it's like, I'm no saint, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, Kellen, you know, but it really, it's like, it's a good business strategy to be like, if you sincerely, selflessly serve the world around you, people look for opportunities to take care of you as well.
Yeah.
And if you're someone constantly trying to squeeze everything, no one's going to want to do that for you.
Yeah.
You know, so the question is like, are you going to be more powerful just completely on your own, figuring it all out, or you know, is the universe going to transpire in your favor?
Yeah. I love that. Mm. And you saw that happen. It sounds like when you, for example, when you gave away the guide for free, you had some inkling that, hey, something really cool might happen here. But did it surprise you how people reacted?
I'm just someone who, like, the way I'm wired, one of my beliefs is like, I believe I'm gonna like win. Like, I have no scarcity of like, is Kellen gonna get whatever Kellen wants in life, right? Like, I don't, and I also don't think I know right now what I'm gonna want 1 year from now. And so all I
Hmm.
do is participate in right now what is like awesome.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I have like a strong moral compass. It's like directional, but like, so for me, it's like it's not like I'm spending all of the money I have at all times, right? And so it's sort of like I don't know. It's like I like to play guitar. I like to be outside in the sun.
Mm.
You know, I buy clay credits. Like, you know, I like healthy food. You know, grass fed beef or something. But like, I don't have expensive hobbies. I don't. And so for me, I don't know. It's like money doesn't make people happy, you know? And so it's again, just like at the beginning, it's like money is not the end all be all. And so what I saw was like, yes, I have this money. Here's like an analogy I'll use is like, I had this thought like when I was way younger, like a middle schooler, but I was like, if I have $400,000 to buy a house and I live in the Bay Area, so that's like a small, like you can't get a house for that anymore. But $400,000 to buy a house or $400,000 to buy a car, if you put it in a car, it's going to have more asymmetrical value than the house externally, so to speak, right? We're not going to do this. Like we're not chasing.
You're saying for social status.
Just yeah, I don't know. It's just like a $400,000 car is like, oh my god, $400,000 house in the Bay Area is like, ugh.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? It's just that. And so to me, it's like, okay, there's this money. Is this enough money that I get to like quit and stop doing things? Absolutely not. It's, you know, 8 grand, 10 grand. If I just give away 10 grand as a guy who makes like 70 grand, is that going to make a whole bunch of people literally like explode their mind? Absolutely it is. So like which thing is like just more asymmetrical? You know, it's like extremely incremental for me to have $10,000 more dollars. It's extremely asymmetrical to be the guy who gave away $10,000 that like I probably shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, I had a more like you know, I mean like so I've just found that like indexing high on pattern interrupt, on give before get, and like being enjoyable and being like you know, it just works, you know, and like that was in I'm sure there were like earlier forms in my life of me like seeing that and generally believing it. But when I did this, I mean, it was pretty random. I don't know. I think like if I was to get as transactional as possible, I probably knew that I could make more money still. You know what I mean? I think I probably also just knew like, yeah, I'm gonna make this $300 and a shit ton of people still. And so I think it was kind of like, yeah, like whatever, like there's some sort of risk here. But within like 5 minutes, I posted a video on my Twitter and it's like explaining it. Within like 5 minutes, I'd gotten like, you know, just like a bunch of huge accounts had followed me. I was getting a bunch of these DMs. Like it was just like one of the most light switch like moments in my professional career of just being like, oh, wait, okay, just like don't do that again. Like always do it every single time in every single way. You know what I mean? I run the clay community I run, right? We just broke 700 members the other day, right? And like people are constantly like, why don't you charge for this? You should charge for this. I would pay for this. Will you make a paid version? It's like, no, because at this point, it's a way bigger deal to everyone involved that I'm not charging for this than the money would be if I did. And so that's the thing. And like, that's the value. You know what I mean?
I love that.
It's just fun. It's just fun. Like kind of like we're all going to die one day. Like whether I have like 100 Lamborghinis or if I have like just a patch of dirt, like it's going to kind of go towards the same thing. And so I think in the middle of this, like some lens is like I'm trying to win, like I'm trying to like not lose, which is like a scarce minded, like make the right decision. To me, this is art. You know, life is art. I'm expressing. And so to me, it's like, I don't know, man. Like sometimes you're like in a guitar solo and you're like, and you like pull it down. And you're like, oh, that was terrible. And you got to go back. Sometimes you pull it down. And you're like, man, that rules. And you're like, shred from there. It's okay. You know, and to me, like, I believe being someone who's willing to take shots, it'll probably be better than the people who are like cowardly towards things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I've seen that with my life philosophy recently. Just all the uncertainty coming with AI makes it so you realize you don't know. Like, so like living in the now makes a lot of sense and optimizing for, I think what you're talking about, like enjoyment and just like, hey, it's now.
You know what it is actually too is barbell strategy. Like literally like not to like force a Taleb thing. But okay, so barbell strategy is like an allocation of risk where it's basically like, so, you know, Taleb talks about like basically people making like asymmetrical wealth, like becoming extremely wealthy. And the idea is like, it's not about making the one perfect bet, but the people that make the most money are actually making the most amount of bets. Like they're participating the most, right? So that's on one side of the barbell, right? A barbell, like a bar plate on each side. So on one side, you have high risk, high reward, right? Like stocks, NFTs, like betting on horses, right? And so the most likely way that you're going to win the most is one of these working. So you want to have as many as possible. But, right, what do you balance that against? On the other side, avoid catastrophic failure. Don't die. Basically meaning like longevity of placing bets, right? Not velocity. And so it's like, okay, how do you place the most amount of bets? Is by having a balanced, safe reserve over here that you can actually exist off of. So like, you know, I maxed out my 401k since I was 18 years old. I save, I don't do a lot of stuff. Like I don't do anything. And so part of it is sort of like, and if you think of like, you know, I mean, at least like, I live in the Bay Area, like in American society in general, it's sort of like the middle class is going away in a lot of ways, right? And so it's sort of like you're either going to be like working, participating in kind of like a normal day-to-day life, but you're a little bit under the gun of it, or you have to win like big. You know, it's not 20% raise. It's like, you know, I need to go make 10 times as much as I did before so my wife can quit and I can have 8 kids. You know what I mean? And like that's what I want. And so like, and I want my brother.
That's what you specifically want?
Seven's the number that
So,
you said.
okay.
But like, you know, you can only choose for the next one. But
If
in
you have
theory,
twins
like,
on the last one, then it'll be
oh,
eight.
dude, I
So
love twins. I hope we pray. They don't run in the family. You know, and so to me, you know, it's like if it's just that, it's like the you know, so like the Taleb barbell thing would be like as a worker, you should basically either be kind of like plugging along, being like just bang average because you're sort of like having art like the effort to outcome balance in that realm is good.
Mhm.
And on the other side, the only reason it makes sense to work hard is to try to like get these big payoffs. And then you better put it all in because then you're competing with everyone else who wants that. And so the balance between these two is like barbell theory. And so going back to like my thing is sort of like if I literally felt like my life could be ruined without that $10,000, wouldn't have done it. But because I had at least some sort of something, I guess I was able to do this like risky thing, which is like, you know, I don't know, but just
that makes, yeah, you're able to exercise intelligent abundance because you had the reserve and you're doing well financially
yeah,
otherwise.
because like the middle ground, it's sort of like I can gamble with the middle ground because it's like, you know, I don't know, just to give like a random number. Let's say it's like, hey, if you make 50 grand, you can like rent a house, have a car, you can take a vacation a year and you're gonna like live a normal life.
Mhm.
But let's say that then you make like 200 grand in the Bay Area. That might be like you have a little bit of a nicer car, a little bit of a nicer house. You still only take one vacation a year. You don't have a vacation, you know, like it actually takes quite a bit to get to the next level of like actually changing like the way that your life and time gets spent.
Yeah.
And I think people don't take that for serious. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people I think kind of look at it like, oh, I'll kind of do this thing. You know, it's like, no, no, no. And so for me, it's trying, I don't know, just that. Like it's like participating and being like extremely intentional about that and sort of like willing to put all of my energy into making that thing work and not being precious to the middle ground because being precious to the middle ground, it's like, you know, you get 30% better and then you go scarce minded against this. You don't get to go to the 10x thing. You have to be like, dude, we can't get into it too much, but like I had a literal test of this in my agency where as things started to go, okay, I had a W2 job come along that wanted to throw a bunch of money and it was conceptually exactly this, where it's like, hey, you could say yes to like a, you know, much better version, but it still represents like fundamentally like, you know, you're gonna have 5 days a week, not, you know, blah, 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 thing. And so I think that, you know, I think like truly committing to like this is this idea that I'm going to pursue and I'm going to be willing to like play with the cards that I have to get there. That's a piece of it as well.
I love that. Yeah. So 7 or 8 kids. What else is in this dream? The dream outcome.
I don't know, not too much, nothing. Jerry Garcia.
But like having lots of money enables.
I don't even know. Like it's I don't you know, it's like the financial stuff is like an inevitability. Some things that are like cool to me, you know, so okay, like I have the Clay Cafe. It's like I have this thing like a training ground of people that's very like exciting for me. You know, I see a world where like some of the things that I would really like would be like, as an example, being able to have the lowest bar for hiring and then turning those people into really high bar people would be really cool. Like being a business, it's like we can succeed hiring someone that isn't as far along in their journey as most businesses need in order to be serviceable. And we turn them into, by the time they're quote unquote done or whatever, like better versions than they would be in the other things. That starts to be really cool to me, right? Because it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, in inevitability in that is like the business has to succeed. You have to be able to, you know, you have to have your stuff dialed together so well that like that can work. And that's like a burden I can put on myself and my team to build that thing that is like uniquely aimed, you know? So like what's best, what's most successful? It's like, I don't know, you know? And so, you know, I want to have more time for my family. I want my wife not to have to work. Those are definitely like very real. I don't know. We'll see where this thing goes.
Nice.
I think it'd be fun. Like, honestly, I could see myself like really actually is I eventually will join another team. Like one day, whether I sell this business or I like get myself out of, you know, whatever it is, but like, it would be really fun to like have no external pressures, like have it be complete discretion
Yeah.
and then just go be like a RevOps manager at a company, or like be like I'll be any position. I'll be an AE. I don't care. I'll be an SDR. Like just do
Yeah.
so, but it would
Because
be
you absolutely want to.
yeah, yeah, just like go because I like to compete. I do jujitsu, I do martial arts. You know, it's like I literally am super competitive, and I'm like okay with losing. I have a huge chip on my shoulder, high energy, high intensity.
All right, we got a few minutes left. I know this is going to be super valuable to people. Speaking of, you just talked about up leveling. So if you saw someone who's smart and entrepreneurial and they want to do their own thing, they want to become a successful agency owner, let's say it's in the GTM engineering or clay space, how would you think about approaching that? Obviously, it's going to be different for each person depending on their strengths, but maybe there's some commonalities.
Well, no, I have like a meta lens to apply, which is like, so if you think of like commerce, transactions, the economy, and if we think of like rarities, like what is rare, which would be like holds value, right? It is way more rare to be valuable than it is to receive the reward for being valuable. Every single B2B deal, the money gets transacted. Not every single time does the valuable outcome happen.
Right.
Most people who believe they're good but don't have the amount of flow of business they want are often, like I said earlier, gatekeeping their ability to prove how good they are behind a dollar amount that is at face value disagreeable to the market and is just killing, right? So for me, the first time I went out on my own is like the market rejected you, Kellen. So what I do, I went and worked for Joey Gilkey, fractional VP of sales. He had a business, he had a model, plug in, learn to run the play, eventually became somewhat my play, right? Our play, whatever. That was really good. So like step one, you know, if you have like no reputation, you don't really know what you're doing, go work for someone who does, you know, and go and do it through the lens, not for how much money you make, not for anything other than you need it so that when you leave, if you leave, that you now have that thing that you lacked before. You know, for me, I call it like a core value in our business is become undeniable. Right? Undeniable represents like it is not opinion, it is not subjective. There are things that are opinion and subjective, right? So it's like, what is the things that can become undeniable? It's like the way we show up, you know, some of that type of stuff, right? And you can also think of it as like, what do you become to your market? If I'm standing in front of the market and they're like critiquing something I'm doing, it's immovable. They're allowed to have their perspective and like we can have disagreements and stuff, but I'm not gonna be, if someone like really disagree with me philosophically, there's 0% chance I'm gonna like change to get their business versus just like stand up and be like, all right, like we're different. We're not gonna do this, right? So I think like first that, I think the next version of that is like get repetitions doing it first. So it's like if the first thing's like become personally like I trust that Nathan can do this. The next thing is like go do it and don't let the dollars, like the transaction, get in the way of doing the thing. So it's like if you just have to do work for free, just go start to build up like this person hired me to do this thing and start just posting about that. And almost for sure then you're just like if you can do those, you're just you'll get some of the other stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, you know, again, it's like, don't, you know, to me, I use the analogy of like cowboys pointing their guns at each other and like, put yours down, right? And like, you're pointing yours at me being like, help me. And I'm going, give me money. We got to put ours down first. We're going to put ours away. And we're going to, I'm going to come help you, partner. And then afterwards, you're going to take, you know, and the people that do that, just, I'm like so certain it'll just work well for them.
Amazing. Love that. What are common, maybe related, what are common mistakes you see new people in the space making?
Yeah, I just think like one is like bad communication. Like I get a lot of people to come ask me like really convoluted things and I'm like, what's your customer saying? Like, I don't know. I'm like okay, like if this is an important thing to be figured out and you haven't said, you're doing exactly the thing you shouldn't be doing, you know what I mean? Like if it's kind of like if success hinges on this thing and you're like, you know, no offense, but like 26-year-old kid with like 5 SDR jobs and nothing else, and you're like sitting in your room DMing me on Slack, you know, it's like you're screwing these people. You need to go help them. You need to go, hey, Nathan, the number one thing for us to figure out is this. Here's my notes. I don't have the solution. What do you think? And like start to talk, you know. So I think it's like have open communication, like be brave and be honest. I think like trying to develop acumen is underrated. Like, again, it's kind of like there's a lot of people who learn like the transactional side of cold email where it's like, oh, find someone with a big TAM and a good offer. And it's like, and so what it ends up being is like, you're just a conduit for like a known thing. Like you're like a zero value add. And if you're seeking that, that is fragile like that, because as soon as someone says, hey, we don't want zero value add, you're gone. Right. The flip side is if you can be like actually helping people think about like, what are you trying to solve? How's that plugging in the grand scheme of things? And like, you make it part of like a process and like a part of like a relationship with people, that goes a lot better. And I think just being like transactional, like just wanting dollars too much, being cheap, like being flimsy, well, all that type of stuff.
Makes sense. Yeah. What are your beliefs around like the ability of people to learn this type of strategic thinking? Like, did that just come natural to you, or have you seen people be able to pick that up well, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really good, like I want to spend like a whole podcast one day thinking about that, because basically like my lens, what my gut says before I can even decide that for other people is like, if you can't do that for people, you shouldn't go be a service provider, basically.
Mm.
Or it's like you're being dishonest if you're not open about that with your customers.
Hmm.
Because most of these people need help. They don't know what they're doing, and they think you represent something way bigger than like probably what you are, if that's you, basically.
Mhm.
And I think that sucks, because I know my business and a lot of our businesses participate in an ecosystem where people are like, these guys are scammers and they're con artists and they're blah, blah, blah. And it's because those people go misrepresent things, right? So
Yeah.
first, it's like, I literally think people have a bit of a responsibility to like right size what you are to what you do.
Yeah.
And like figure it out. There's people who do cold email business and are like, hey, this is what we do. It's really simple. So it's that. Now, can they God, man, I want to say yes. Like in my heart, dude, in my heart, yes. Like I believe people can change. I'm a coach by trade. Like I've trained soccer players and soccer coaches. I do the Clay Cafe thing. And so like, what's fair is it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not simple. I have a ton of experience, fractional VP of sales, 24 companies over 1 year. I got to 0 to 1 outbound. Like that was a crazy experience.
Mhm.
Again, when I tell people like, go work for an agency that's doing this stuff, I'm sure people that work with Eric Nowosowski 6 months later spit out PhD in the stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, and a lot of people are probably, let's just say someone's like making like 10 grand a month and they're like, I'm not going to go work for him for 7 grand a month. But what they don't realize is like, bro, you might be a 50 grand a month business on the other side of that 6 month stint. But also, the demand side of the market has a lot to blame too, because they do this, like the demand kind of forces a lot of the cheesiness as well.
Mhm.
Transactional demand, like ROI guarantees, de-risk deals. Like, it's like, hey, we're going to pay you per lead. It's like, all right, cool. I'm just going to send 1 million emails. Right. And it's like, you're both getting what you asked for. Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to break out of. It's a cycle that I see sometimes people get stuck in, where they get stuck in those transactional pay per lead deals. They come across as cheesy. Their branding just naturally devolves, and then it makes it hard for them to hire. It makes it hard for them to attract good customers, and they don't see any better customers, presumably, and it it just keeps going. And like, how do you break out of that, especially if you're not an experienced person yet, and you're just getting experience from the same? It's yeah,
It is why, like,
hard.
maybe those people do productize. You know what I mean? Like, if you're like, yo, I don't know anything, it's like, okay, cool, just clean up email addresses and CRMs. Fine.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? But it's why I think like it's just right sizing. If someone's listening and they're like, I want to be like this hot shot agency, I would just urge people like, go the quality route.
yeah.
Don't sell your soul. Like, go the quality route, go slow, do people the right way. And for me, it was like the 18-month mark. 18 months into my agency, like quadrupled the rate of everything else. And I think it's because at the 12-month mark, it got a little faster. 18, it was like off to the races. And to me, that represented like just getting through it enough that people like, there's something to this, So I would go for like staying power more than like arbitrage of the moment.
All right, this has been a really
Nice.
good conversation.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Oh, of course, dude. Thank you.
All right, can't wait
Yeah,
to
hell yeah.
publish this.
Yeah, it'll be fun. How long do you normally take to turn around? I know you're a little rusty, right? No.
I'm just gonna stop it now.